Good morning, everybody. I want to extend a very special welcome to everybody who came to the breakfast this morning. It was a real pleasure to meet you and to get to speak with you. I'm very glad you're here. Thank you for coming. Who here has ever had an argument on Facebook? I can tell some of you. Go on, raise your hands if you've ever had an argument on Facebook. Okay, so for those of you who have never done this, and for those of you who need a reminder, here's how it usually goes, at least for me. You're sitting at home, sipping a cup of tea with your pinky up if you're doing it properly, happily scrolling through your timeline, which is sort of like a digital bulletin board where people can pin up all sorts of different things. And you're laughing at funny jokes. You smile at pictures of people's families. You feel that magic warmth that comes over you when you watch cute videos of cats. And then it happens. You see something wrong. Someone has posted something, some written opinion or internet meme, and it is wrong, so very wrong. The tea sputters from your mouth onto the screen, and you feel this rising fire within you, and it's now your personal mission, your sacred duty to defeat them. With your keyboard of truth and your mouse of rightness, you are going to assault the wrong thing and you are going to change their mind. You're going to go into online battle against them and emerge victorious with them graciously retreating and retracting their post and admitting that they have changed their opinion and that you were right all the time, which totally happens. I have spent whole days fighting with people I disagree with on Facebook. I'll see something early in the morning, not that early, I don't get up that early usually. I'll see something in the morning which sets me off, and I will still be fighting about it that night. There is a now famous comic strip from the popular webcomic XKCD, which shows a stick figure sitting at a computer and typing furiously. And coming from outside the frame, someone's asking, "Are you coming to bed?" And the figure at the keyboard replies, "I can't. This is important." "What?" asks the disembodied voice. "Someone is wrong on the internet." And the wrong is underlined. That stick figure is me. I'm pretty sure they based it on my life. I love disagreeing with people, and I love showing that I'm a smart person and pointing out other people's mistakes and their wrong thinking. And when someone is wrong, I'm like a dog with a juicy bone. I can't let it go. I just keep going at it until I win. And that's okay, as far as it goes. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing with people. Disagreement is how we learn and grow. People often think, I find, that simply saying to someone, "I disagree with you," is impolite. And I'm here to tell you that it isn't. It's perfectly fine to disagree with other people, as long as you respect them while you do it, treat them with dignity, you don't demean them. If we never disagreed with each other, we'd have no check on our beliefs. Disagreement helps us learn. Disagreement is important. But disagreeing well, in a way that helps us learn something, can, as Maxine said so perfectly, be very, very difficult. I've noticed in myself a tendency to make disagreements into battles. Does anyone else ever feel like they're doing that? Okay, it's just me then. I don't believe you. Particularly when I care very much about something, I notice that I sometimes care more about winning the argument and proving the other person wrong than about learning as much as I can from the discussion. In situations like these, the battle lines are drawn, the knives out, it's intellectual duel to the death, and to the victor the spoils. And I really like to win. An example of this is happening right now in cyberspace on, you guessed it, Facebook. This weekend, a certain candidate for the presidency came to St. Louis to hold a rally, and a large number of protesters disrupted his speech. For a full 10 minutes, coordinated waves of protesters chanted and unfurled banners, preventing him from conveying his message, before they were hauled off, arrested, and cited for breach of the peace. And some of my friends and colleagues were among the protesters, and had things turned out a little differently, I would have been there too, which probably would have meant I would not be here, because I might have been deported by now, so I was pretty lucky that I didn't get arrested at that protest. Now, I support the right of people to protest presidential candidates, even to the point of sometimes preventing them from speaking for a little bit. I think that when you run for high office in a democracy, you should understand that the public will have something to say about that, and you can't reasonably expect never to encounter a political protest which disrupts one of your events. I think that protest, including disruptive protest, is an important part of free speech. And I don't believe that disrupting 10 minutes of an hours-long rally, and this one likes to speak for hours, is wrong. And I've said that repeatedly this weekend on Facebook. Now, many of my friends and acquaintances, and totally random people I've never met, which is the delight of arguing on Facebook, disagree. In fact, I found out this morning that Kate and I perhaps have a disagreement on this. They think I'm wrong, and that my view threatens democratic values because protesters, by disrupting a political speech, are essentially preventing the candidate from exercising their freedom. And I think the same things about their view. I think that their view is going to lead to a less vibrant democracy. And for the past 2 days, we have been having a running battle on the issue in the comment threads on Facebook. And every time there's a new comment about it, my phone gives me a little vibration, and I have to charge immediately to the front lines to fire off my next salvo in the debate. And I've probably had a few replies since I started talking today, and maybe I should check. No, I'm not going to. Most of these people I'm arguing with, I'm disagreeing with, are my friends. They're people I respect. So it is possible to have a reasonable conversation where we listen to each other. But these are very polarized times, aren't they? And people are passionate about their views, and sometimes the disagreement becomes too much. I begin to see the struggle to win the argument as the most important thing, and this can become unhealthy. If we begin to see those who disagree with us not only as mistaken or misinformed, but stupid, or worse, acting in bad faith, then we begin to dehumanize them potentially, and we lose the opportunity ourselves to learn something from their perspective. After all, if we think someone is stupid or wicked or lying, why would we seek to learn from them? But that's what our core value this month is about, in part, the idea that we can learn from everyone, even from people with whom we passionately disagree, even from people whose views we believe to be dangerous or abhorrent. And this is a tall order. It is not easy to do. Like many of our core values, it asks a lot of us. But I think it's a good one. I think we need to actively cultivate an attitude by which we seek out what there is to learn from people who disagree with us. I believe this is the only way to reliably improve our own beliefs and to start to drain the poison swamp of our political culture, which makes it seem it's like we live in a different country to some other people. At least I feel like that sometimes. A different planet sometimes. I'm like, what planet do you even live on that you can believe that? And when I start thinking about that, I try to come back to 3 ideas that help me learn from people I disagree with. And in something quite unusual for my platforms, I'm going to just give you some tips. I'm going to try and tell you some things that I think will help, some things you can practically do to have better disagreements with people. First, I think we need to actively seek out people who disagree with us. When I was in high school, I took a politics class, and it was in that class that I first encountered the writing of John Stuart Mill, one of the fathers of the philosophy of liberalism, which has shaped much of our political culture and notion of rights and democracy that we enjoy today. And Mill believed that engaging with people who disagree with us is essential if we are even to know what we believe about a particular topic. He said, and this is a bit of a long quote, but I think he's such a great writer, it's worth giving it all. He who knows only his own side of the case knows little of that. Your reasons may be good, and no one may have been able to refute them. But if he is equally unable to refute the reasons of the opposite side, if he does not so much as know what they are, he has no grounds for preferring either opinion. Nor is it enough that he should hear the opinions of adversaries from his own teachers, presented as they state them and accompanied by what they offer as refutations. He must be able to hear them from persons who actually believe them. He must know them in their most plausible and persuasive form. What Mill means here is that the only way we can have confidence in our own beliefs is by testing them against the beliefs of those who passionately disagree. If we never speak to people who disagree with us, then we have no reason to prefer our beliefs to any other beliefs. We lack grounds for comparison. So we need to actively seek out passionate, persuasive advocates of ideas we disagree with, so we can test our beliefs against theirs. And Mill believed, and I think he's right, that this was a win-win proposition. Either we would hear the passionate and persuasive case of our intellectual opponents and come up with reasons to reject their point of view nonetheless, in the process making our grasp on our own beliefs stronger, or we would find ourselves unable to counter their beliefs and therefore discover that we were wrong and have to change our minds. In the battle of ideas, Mill believed, even when we lose, we win, because we get to change our minds towards something that is more reasonable. It's no surprise, perhaps, that it was in that same politics class that my teacher introduced me to a practice which encouraged seeking out differing views. He assigned every student the task of reading at least one newspaper a week. But it had to be a newspaper that tended to present things from a political perspective different to our own. So I, as a budding left-liberal teenager, had to seek out the right-wing Daily Mail or Daily Telegraph and read that, precisely because I wouldn't agree with much of it. And I still do that today. I listen to right-wing talk radio and watch Fox News, and I occasionally read articles on Breitbart. That last one I can stomach about one a week. So that's the first practice that I'm recommending to help us learn from people we disagree with. Seek out passionate and persuasive people who disagree with you and read their writing regularly. Make it part of your routine. And don't get out of it by pretending that no one smart disagrees with you on a particular topic. I found myself, no one could possibly disagree with me on that. I don't need to find another view. There are very few topics I've found where someone smart doesn't take a totally different opinion. The only one I think of is whether we should watch Downton Abbey or CSI. That one's an obvious one. This practice, though, is no use at all if we engage those we disagree with only superficially, making no effort to really understand them or where they're coming from. So here's the second complementary practice. We have to try to believe that what the people we are disagreeing with are saying is true. Now, that's a weird idea, but Peter Elbow, an emeritus professor of English at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, recommends that his students practice what he calls the believing game, which is a method of thinking designed to complement our usual critical approach to ideas. Professor Elbow suggests that usually in school we are taught, if we're taught to think at all, to play the doubting game, in which we see ideas or arguments that might look good on the surface and try to find all the flaws in them. That was certainly the nature of my education in British private schools. Being clever, for us, was often associated with pointing out what is wrong in other people's ideas. And this, I think, is the main drive in those endless Facebook arguments. Everyone is circling everyone else, looking for chinks in their armor, trying to find the cracks, the weak points, ready to pounce on them. And then you get a good comment off it, and then you go on to the next round. That's the doubting game. And Elbow thinks that is a good game and a necessary game, and one we should learn to play. But he also thinks we need to develop our ability to play the opposite game, the believing game, in which we look at the ideas and arguments we think are bad on the surface, that we disagree with on the face of them, and try in a rigorous and systematic way to find what's strong about them. He says essentially that when we encounter an idea that doesn't sit well with us, like perhaps the idea in my case that protesters should be disallowed from interrupting political rallies, we should say, how could this argument possibly be right? What can I agree with here? What's good about the case that's being made? We should just try for a while to suspend our initial judgment and believe that the other person is correct, as an exercise. We don't have to ultimately agree with them, but it's a practice, a habit of mind. This is how Elbow describes it. He says, the believing game is the disciplined practice of trying to be as welcoming or accepting as possible to every idea we encounter, not just listening to views different from our own and holding back from arguing with them, not just trying to restate them without bias, but actually trying to believe them. That's an unusual way to think about approaching disagreements, but one which I think is very much in line with our core value this month, which I would be happy for any children of mine to develop. Applying this approach to the example I've used, I suddenly see rather a lot I agree with in my opponent's views. I note, for instance, that we both agree that free speech is important. We just disagree about how best to protect it. We both think that political candidates do have a right to present their case to the people, and that if their presentations are disrupted too much, the political process would suffer. We just disagree about how much is too much. We both actually disagree with a lot of what this particular political candidate is saying. We just disagree with how to respond to what we disagree with. So there's actually quite a lot of common ground, which immediately becomes apparent the moment I start to play the believing game. I also find that when I play this game, my approach to the people expressing these arguments changes. Suddenly, I see them not just as bearers of wrong opinions, but of smart, principled people who differ with me in important, but not all important ways. This is a big step towards humanizing those who we take to have even abhorrent views. Try playing the believing game, and even better, try to get good at playing it. It can be a fun mental exercise, actually. Don't forget the doubting game, though. That's still important. The game of trying to find fault with an argument that you think is good. Because that's going to be our third practice for learning from people you disagree with. I want to encourage you to play the doubting game on yourself. And this is the most difficult bit. On your own ideas. Develop the regular practice of taking something you believe in strongly and trying to find what's wrong with it. This is an idea that any scientists in the audience should be familiar with. It's a common misconception that scientists are always trying to prove the truth of their favorite theories. But it's really more accurate to say that a lot of the time scientists are trying to disprove them. Scientists understand that while no number of pieces of evidence is ever enough to prove a theory true beyond all doubt, a single piece of counter-evidence is enough to prove a theory false. Philosopher of science Karl Popper noted that you could see 100 white swans every day of your life and still die having never proved the theory all swans are white. But if you see a single black swan, that is enough to disprove that same theory. So he suggests we should look for black swans. Instead of doing what we usually do, which is get all excited when something seems to confirm what we already believe. I love it when I leave a movie and I read the reviews online and I just read the ones that I agree with. Like if I thought the movie was terrible and this reviewer seems to like it, I'm like, no, I'm not reading that. That's rubbish. We like to read things that agree with us. But Popper would suggest that we should actually do exactly the opposite if we want to learn from people we disagree with. We should try and find that one piece of evidence that would prove our own views wrong. Collecting a wide range of people who disagree with us and playing the believing game with them, trying to genuinely believe what they say is true, can lead us to uncover those black swans, those ideas, arguments, or pieces of evidence that show us that we weren't right after all, and thus help us learn from those who disagree with us. So those are the three practices. Seek out disagreement actively. Play the believing game and get good at it. Look for black swans. Doubt your own opinions. Now, those three practices are not easy. They go against all our intuitions about how we would like to go through life. But they are ways of moving through the world that I personally have tried to cultivate for many years now and frequently fail at, most often on Facebook. But if we are going to learn from those who disagree with us, we need to hold their humanity in our hands and genuinely consider the possibility that we are wrong, because we can learn from everyone. And in that spirit, I would like to invite you downstairs after the platform to discuss this with me, particularly if you disagree. Thank you very much.